Hi, it's
Hi, Katie.
hi Luke. It's a great pleasure to be here with Luc De Bry from Belgium, and we connected online some time ago, but had the pleasure of meeting at the Crazy Wise conference in Rotterdam earlier this month. It was great to finally meet you in person, Luke. And you are a molecular biologist by trade.
Yes,
Yeah.
the molecular is a big word, but say biologist first.
Okay, so you're in.
Biological science. Because molecular is a bit of a reduction. It's one part of it.
Okay. So you are a biological scientist,
Yes.
originating from Central Africa, and you
I was
described
born
yourself.
and grown up there. 19 years.
Okay, wow. But now living in Belgium, and you studied in Belgium, and
Yes.
researching specifically into nutrition and mental health. Is that right?
Yeah, then been working on the raw materials for the food industry because I understood the plants better, and it was to fill stomachs. So and I did both botany and zoology, so I know the food chain fairly well.
Incredible. So now you're bringing your work history into your passion to support people through mental illness.
Yeah, well, I've
Of
been
your,
working on topics like the mood peptides, the Maya aroma that attracts people to food or not, and things like this. So how do we influence the mood with what we have around
wow.
us?
Wow, it's so important. It's such an important topic, isn't it?
And,
Would you mind, Luke, just giving people a bit of background, a bit of history, and as to why you were became interested in this field, and as much as you'd like to share about your personal story?
my son fell into psychiatry on March 9, 2012. It's my birthday.
Oh, wow. Gosh.
In the evening, he didn't turn up for dinner, so we were anxious. We didn't know where he was. And around 9:30 later in the evening, we had a call from the hospital. He was there. So at that moment, we knew he was feeling depressed. He had kind of suicidal thoughts, and we said, "Oh, this tonight at least we'll have a good night." Because we don't know what he would do in the night. I would find him in the morning with his wrist cuts or things like this. Or my wife came back from work and he would be hung in the oak tree in our gardens. And that was, we were afraid of something. We didn't understand his depression. And he has two sisters and a brother who had nothing. Why him? Why not the others? And, so it was kind of a teenage crisis that was becoming exaggerated. And we didn't, so we found him in psychiatry, and so it was on a Saturday. When we arrived, he was sleeping, which we were happy to see. When he woke up, he was happy. Someone was taking care of him, had given him sleeping pills. And when he arrived late, and so the psychiatrists were gone for the weekend, he was only with the nurses. On the Sunday, he had slept a bit more, so he was a bit even better. So we were happy to see him there. But then on the Monday, the psychiatrist came back and started the drug. And we didn't know about that, but then we've seen him really falling down.
Right.
So after 6 weeks at the General Hospital in the psychiatry department, he was moved to a sick ward, not far from there. More drugging, and then we had an appointment with the psychiatrist director, and he announced us that our son was now disabled for life.
Yeah.
That was 2 months after he had been admitted, and not knowing what's going on, I started to screen about the general literature and about psychiatry, learn about something, what's psychosis and so on, which I didn't know that even existed.
So you've been researching this for the last 4 years? Yeah.
So I started these first 2 months and before that meeting. And I understood there was the chemical imbalance was in the Newton hypothesis. And coincidence, I did my PhD on the precursors of serotonin and dopamine. These are amino acids.
Oh, oh
And I
wow.
knew the biochemical pathways. It was
Right.
my domain,
Wow.
my original research domain.
Wow.
I thought that something doesn't work right
So
in
you
this
knew that wasn't the case, right?
because genetic defects in one of the enzymes leads to death around the age of 7, 8.
Hmm.
So you can become 20 years old.
Right.
That
Okay.
doesn't fit. And the probability to have such a genetic defect is about 1 in a million.
Mm, mm, mm.
That's genetics. So that's the science we know today.
Gosh, wow. So the
Probability.
psychiatrist didn't know who
Yeah,
he was taking on when he
no, he
said that to
didn't
you.
know so who I was. So I couldn't get my son out. He was in the procedures,
Mm, mm.
in the insurance and so on. So
Right. Gosh.
when I asked where's the genetic defect, what doesn't work, he said, oh, it's too complicated. So and then I asked about the genetics. I said, well, the chance in a million for one gene, two genes, then it's 1 million times 1 million. You get finally 1 trillion, the probability. And then the people in psychiatry, they say there are about 100 genes are involved for schizophrenia. And the probability to have schizophrenia is 1 in 100.
Mm,
Not
mm.
1 in a few billions. Huh?
Yeah. So I mean, there's no evidence for all of this.
There's no evidence for genetic basis.
No. No.
It's something. But psychiatrists don't. They, I haven't seen in any psychos that I visited a lab for biochemistry, for instance.
No. No, because it doesn't exist, does it? It's amazing to meet somebody like you, Luke, that kind of is doing so much research into proving otherwise. The current kind of biomedical model doesn't hold up. So
Once if you have a bit of knowledge in the science, nothing holds up. It's just a colossal organization, and it's like with agile feet. This we have in the mythology, the Greek mythology. There was this colossus.
oh, Colossus.
Yes, and he collapsed because his feet were not strong enough.
Yeah.
It's one of these marvels of the ancient Greek.
Okay. I know that because you just sent me some presentation that you made in the history of psychiatry from earlier this year, and I know you linked quite a lot of the mythological, historical myths into this, which is just incredible. And you mentioned that you're going to be writing a paper for the Lancet about this.
Yep, my Lancet, then I look for instruction to authors. For review is not really the good place. It's you can have a 2-page reviews and then say something is happening with the shamans, open dialogue and so on, but you don't have really the knowledge. In 2 pages you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
If you can have a 5,000 words review, then it's 5 pages. Then you can have a long list of references.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They do that. It's more the New England Journal of Medicine, or would prefer something more general for the science. Is the new magazine of Nature, it's Nature Behavior.
Okay, is that an international magazine? I've not
Yes,
heard of.
Nature and Science are the top 2 in the top 2 or 3.
Okay.
5 of the world, and then Nature has subsidiary journals.
Mm-hmm.
Like Nature Oncology for cancer, Nature Molecular Biology, Nature, and there's the new one is Nature Behavior.
Okay. And I know you said that that you're happy to do another interview to share some of this information once that's been published, which would be amazing. Yes. Would you mind just giving people, if we just kind of rewind a bit, just giving people a bit of more of an introduction as to what you've done in the last 4 years and what you've discovered and kind of what you've been focusing on?
So it's 4.5 years ago now that my son was admitted, a bit more, 4 3/4. The first year I did search the academic peer-reviewed literature of psychiatry. And of course, there is nothing to find. So it's even in the psychiatry textbook that people are disabled for life, they're dependent on drugs, and this is what it is taught to the students.
I know, it's scary, isn't it?
Yeah. And after a year, in scientific research, we learn after a year or two maximum. If we find nothing, then we look into the opposite direction. So we U-turn. The way opposite to psychiatrists is to the patients, to the sufferers.
Yeah.
And they don't publish in academic peer-reviewed journals, of course, but they do publish a lot. And so you can start to screen all these testimonies that they have and start to do some classification as we do in systematics in biology. And you can find that some people may be happy at the beginning to have some psychiatric drugs because they were really deep in the field, stabilized them. But after a while, they all want to get rid of it. So there's almost no exception. If there's apparently an exception, someone who was really even later. So at some moment in time, it's a critical parameter to look for and to take into consideration. And one of these testimony, there was a guy said in a forum, that forum doesn't exist anymore. It's a Dutch forum. I tried to come off clozapine, Leponex, and I've done 3 times, and 3 times I failed. I don't know how to do. Can someone help me? There is someone with experience out there. And I looked for the answers, the response, and a few lines further, there was a mother answered, yes, I have experience with clozapine. I lost my son, 17 years old, heart attack, 300 milligrams clozapine per day. And my son, 400. So I got really scared. And about a week later, or a few days later, I didn't record it the days. I discovered the recovery psychosis webpage in the blog of Monica Cassani, beyondmeds.com.
Beyond Meds, great resource, yeah.
And I didn't, for a year, I hadn't used the word recovery because I thought, it's impossible. We have to find something else. And I was surprised. And then I started from that webpage of Monica. And there were 2 important links. They're still there on the internet, that webpage. One is what a shaman sees in a mental hospital.
Yeah.
The second is results of a program in Finland.
Okay, yep.
So I read what a shaman sees in a mental hospital, and it immediately talked to me. I was born and grown up 19 years in Africa.
Right, yeah.
I could recognize, it was not in our region of Africa, but it was the same kind of approach. I was not involved in the work of local shamans at that time. I was so wow that something is happening when people are suffering from depression.
Yeah. God, this is incredible, Luc. The fact that you've got connections, with the African, the shamanism, but also, I know you've been looking into open dialogue and the community aspect as well. So it's also interlinked, isn't it? I was saying to you earlier how lucky your son is that you've kind of got all of this knowledge and links.
And then the results of a program in Finland led to a next page that's written by Daniel Makler.
Yeah.
And he described then what he saw at the Keropudas Hospital in Tornio in Western Lapland. Then at the bottom there was a link to a trailer for open dialogue, and from there he saw the documentary in the website of Daniel. And so that was May 2013.
Is that Take These Broken Wings, the documentary? It's worth people watching.
There's the first one we saw, because it shows people who, Joan Greenberg and Catherine Penney, who came out. So
Oh.
this, I watched this one first because there were actual people who came out of, who recovered from psychosis.
Mm-hmm.
And it really gives hope, and we watched it with all the family. So I had ordered the 4 DVDs in one go at that time. They were not available on YouTube as yet. So it's back in May 2013.
Right.
And then we watched the family, the Open Dialogue documentary.
Mm-hmm.
We've done that by half an hour at a time because our son couldn't concentrate enough.
Yeah.
He was so drugged.
Yeah.
And then my wife said, you have to go.
Wow.
And,
Wow. Just got shivers.
And at first, before we watched the DVDs, I showed them the evidence to my wife. She started to cry. Her hope was back. I showed it to my son too. And I did that only 1 week after I discovered the webpage of Monica Cassani.
Wow.
I took to check the information because it looked too good to be true.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to raise false hope. So I discovered all the literature by Jaakko Sekula and his team, Taylor, Birgitta Lacaré. It was an incredible, how do we say, kind of awakening to another discipline.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, just to the fact that there's hope for recovery, because that's where it starts, isn't it? You know, not being told this is an illness you've got for life. It's actually the opposite. Like you said, it's the opposite. So you went to
temporary crisis, yeah. Then, when after my wife, I showed to my son the webpage of Monica, and I saw for the first time in 15 months some light in the eyes of my son.
Oh, wow.
And
wow.
He said, after he had read, he said, do you think I have a chance to get out of this shit?
Oh.
And I said, of this mess, and I don't know what. Say, look here.
It's all right. Shit's translatable in every country. International language. Before
talking to you about that, I checked and cross-referenced all this for a full week, and here's all what I read. I had printed the most important. I had some books that came via overnight with Amazon. And I said, I believe in this innovation, and I promise that you will get out.
Wow.
And so he had second light, and then he was very anxious. He had this second question. That, yes, but anxious that I would disappoint him. I didn't want to be disappointed. I said, but how are we going to do? I said, oh, that's easy. We're going to do what psychiatrists don't do. We fly to Lapland.
Wow. Gosh,
we go and
incredible.
We go and see, we'll meet the people, we'll learn from them directly, and then we'll come back and we will apply and have a look. There's also coincidence. In 3 weeks' time, there's an open dialogue workshop at Hämeenlinna, it's 115 kilometers north of Helsinki.
Wow.
So on our way back from Tornio, we'll stop at that workshop. And we'll meet the people who are there. Huh? So there were 300 participants.
Incredible. So when did you go there, Luc?
That was in June 2013.
Okay. And how was that experience for your son? When did it start to shift?
The week before, because he had too much drugs, and we had asked him to ask the psychiatrist to have less. The psychiatrist instead gave more. He was shaking hands, and so he had an anti-Parkinson and one more. So, and then at some moment he almost fell off in the stair. He was so drugged. So I went with him to the psychiatrist to insist he has to have less, and the psychiatrist refused to give less. And so finally we discussed about this and that, and I asked, what do you know about the progress in Scandinavia? Said, oh, I heard something, but I'm not really interested. We have what we need here.
Yeah.
And next week I go to Portugal on holidays. So we didn't say next week we go to Tornio in Western Lapland.
Right.
We didn't tell him.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes you've got to do that. It's the best way, isn't it?
Our sweet revenge in Lapland, we were there with plus 35 degrees C.
Wow.
And sun 24 hours on 24.
Wow.
And in Portugal, he was in a storm, he had only plus 14 degrees.
Should have gone with you.
Yeah, we had that. There was a wave of hot air coming from Russia we were on the polar circle, and it was plus 35 degrees. So
I didn't know it got that hot in Finland. That's
there was no snow at all.
Wow.
So we've seen the reindeers of Christmas Father. They were sweating.
I just think it's incredible, you know, how all of these movements and kind of shifts away from the biomedical paradigm are kind of all coming together now. It's just, there's certainly a shift happening, isn't there?
You know, innovation is something that at the beginning diffuses slowly.
Yeah.
So we were in Western Lapland in Tornio. On the third day, after breakfast, we were going to leave to go to the Polar Circle in Rovaniemi. And the pill organizer of my son was empty. You know, these weekly pill organizers, huh? They get. And so he went to his luggage to fetch the boxes to refill the organizer. And he had forgotten the box at home in Belgium.
Oh.
So there we were. In Lapland, no pill.
Gosh.
To do cold turkey was not a good option.
No. That's not something that we want to promote through this at all.
To get my daughter, who was home. She had no classes this morning, fortunately. So she sent us a scan. And we said, okay, now we go to pharmacist. Huh? So the GPS with pharmacists. And so there was a list of pharmacists in Tornio. So we went to the closest one and showed the prescription. And he said, I'm sorry, we don't have these pills. We don't have these pills. And said, okay, let's go to the next one. They may have run out of stock. And went to the next one. Oh, I'm sorry, we don't have these drugs. Third one. Oh, I'm sorry, we don't have these drugs. Finally, at the eighth pharmacist, sorry, we don't have these drugs.
Oh no, so what happened?
That was for us the best proof that open dialogue is working.
That's such a good point. Yeah.
Don't have that in storage anymore because they don't sell them anymore.
That's incredible. Yeah. Incredible kind of proof, isn't it?
All Western Lapland, you cannot find these drugs at the pharmacist.
Wow. And how long have they been? They've been running open dialogue for 20 years now, is that?
They started in 1980.
Okay.
The political authorities had said, well, Western Lapland is not a rich region of Europe, and we see the moment our taxpayers will not be able to afford the cost anymore. So they challenged the direction of psychiatrists, nurses, sociologists, anthropologists, and people working there to do better, to find a better way. There must be a better way to do it. And so they looked there were 3 hospitals. After 5 years, 2 of them got discouraged and stopped to research. And the third one, Keropudas, they didn't know the other 2 had abandoned. They kept going. And then the first results came year 6.
Right.
Imagine if they had abandoned.
Gosh, I know. And they're a model for the world now, aren't they? I mean,
they had these first results in 1986. And the first publication came in the 90s. The first something, I don't remember the exact date. And then they were so criticized they reproduced the experiment that was published early 2000, 2002, 2003. Where these results 5 years after the crisis, 84% of the people are in a permanent job.
Yes, back to recovery. I know, it's incredible. Yeah.
The other 14, they came much later to get car, and so it takes them longer to go to get a job, to be sufficiently able to work.
Yeah, and I suppose it's going to be dependent on the depth of the trauma as well for the person, and how much time they need to take to work through their issues.
The delay to get car.
The what? Sorry.
The delay to get car before the first signs of the crisis.
Mm-hmm.
If you get car immediately, or if you get car, the average now in mental health care is 1.5 years after the first signs.
Yeah. But I know with open dialogue, it's at the point of crisis, isn't it?
The sooner the better.
Yeah.
And they have found that when they have it really soon, there's a 3 days window.
Yeah.
Where the person then releases everything without keeping something for himself. He's so happy there's a 3 days window. And then 2 weeks later, it's over.
So what happens? Can I ask you what happened with your son, Luc, in that? So I understand now that he's been off medication, off psychiatric drugs for 16 months. Is that right? He's been drug free.
2 years. 2 years.
2 years. Wow. And so what happened from between that time of you going to Finland and now, and him getting better?
Yeah. So we were in Tornio with no pills and no storage in the town.
So you didn't manage to get any medication at all?
No.
Wow.
So we decided to cross over the border to Sweden, where they speak another language. They have another health insurance system and so on. And we were in Haparanda, then over the river, and there we found the drugs.
Right, okay, so he did.
So just there's that river, there's another language, another political system, and there's no communication.
Incredible, isn't it? It's about time we connect the world. I think that's what this is about. It's like collaboration internationally. And I was thinking about that earlier, like when I first had my awakening, I kind of turned away from technology, and it's quite common. I think people don't like technology, but I was thinking how amazing it is that all this is happening now because of the internet. Connecting people all over the world, and we so need it.
The diffusion of innovation doesn't go faster because there are now so many things on the internet that you cannot screen everything.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to have a need for the innovation, and to understand enough. So the first people to understand, they jumped onto the train, and people who don't understand said they don't know where to look for. So they came later. When finally someone tells them, "Hey," when you see Marie Olson had difficulties to introduce that in Massachusetts when she was back from her postdoc with Jaco Sekula. And there was some moment, a journalist, Marvin Ross from Canada, who made a critiques in the Huffington Post.
Right.
And he said he had called a psychiatrist in Helsinki, and that the psychiatrist in Helsinki told him, no, it doesn't work. Open dialogue. But the psychiatrist in Helsinki has never been to Western Lapland, which is far from the north. So he doesn't know what he was talking about.
Yeah, and it's also down to individual, just because he's a psychiatrist, it doesn't mean that he's going to be supportive of it. People have their own agenda.
The biggest university psychiatry center that we have in Belgium is from the Catholic University of Leuven. There are some 70 professors there.
Right.
They have the highest resistance to the change I've ever seen. They just don't want it. And I came back to that because my son has been there some moment.
Okay.
So we were in Tornio. We got the drugs in Sweden over the border. We went back after jumping the polar circle to that seminar. So a week later, we were back in Belgium.
Wow, what a journey.
We had started the coming of drugs. Then once the pill organizer was refilled, And we said we skip 10% of this week, so it's one little cube that we have in this pill organizers. On 10, my son skipped. And once back here, I thought to buy an analytical balance and to do the work myself for the coming off, the grinding the pills and weighing.
I just think we need to kind of say and put in a caveat here that, you know, you were only able to do that because you've got the knowledge, you know, you have that scientific knowledge of what you were doing. We wouldn't recommend that people do that without some kind of medical.
Well, you don't, they need some guidelines, but not the guidelines of the psychiatrist.
Yeah.
But then
it depends on which psychiatrist, I suppose. Some people are lucky.
Yeah, but you need to be lucky to find a good psychiatrist with a human psychiatrist. You don't find many of them. When we were back, I called. Then the daughter of some friends was student in third year of psychiatry, and I asked her, Caroline, I'm calling you. I would like to have a plan how to come off the psychiatric drugs, the safe plan. Said, well, I cannot give you that. Once you're on drugs, is for life. You cannot get rid of that.
Oh gosh!
And she said to me, if I say something else, then next week at my exams I will fail.
There's so much pressure. There's so much pressure.
They don't get any courses for coming off drugs.
I know. Yeah.
So the ignorance, they don't. So I did myself the way I had learned when I was contributing to project in toxicology.
Right.
10% a week with some plateaus.
Yeah.
And then I had a distant cousin with a pharmacist, and I was talking to him and said, oh, may I have an analytical balance? You don't need to buy one. So it saved me 5,000 euros. I can do that for you. All I need is prescription for the drugs. So I got a prescription from our family doctor, gave it to the pharmacist, he did the work. And we had done these pills, the lower amount, week per week.
So how long did it take to taper down?
Then that was the first tapering. I had planned for 4 months, and then my son wanted to go faster. Then I had done something that I haven't heard as yet. That he was on 3 pills, and we decreased the 3 pills at the same time, by keeping the relative proportions constant.
Yeah.
And he was feeling fine, and I was expecting withdrawal symptoms and things like this, not knowing what it is because we had never lived that. And he was saying, "No, I'm fine. Can we go faster?" I was saying, "Maybe we could do in 5 days instead of 7. So let's do it," he said. Okay. So we've done that. And
was he having, sorry Luke, was he having open dialogue at the same time as this was happening, or any psychotherapy or anything?
That's what's missing here. We don't have that in Belgium. So we were trying to get dialogue the way we learned and things like this. That's where we've done our own trials and errors. So at the end of the coming off, it was 3 months. It was mid-August by then. Oh, it had been. We had started.
I think it's important to say as well, because to acknowledge that, you know, he also had this really supportive family network around. So you and your wife and his siblings were all kind of supporting.
Oh, siblings I wouldn't say, because he was before coming into psychiatry. He was in such an antisocial behavior that we call it seen from the outside, not from his side.
Sure.
He had music very, very loud, and the other 3 couldn't study. It was too much noise in the house.
Right. But you and your wife were supportive of what was happening. Yeah. That's kind of what I mean. So
once he was in psychiatry, we felt relieved. The other 3 could study.
Right.
That's a balance to make. We didn't understand. And we didn't know what hearing voices. And that the music so loud was a way for him to cover the voices.
Yeah.
We didn't know. He never told us. And we didn't know about voice hearing and so on. So
sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
First tapering to around end of August. Then he's been for a week at a music camp. and he managed on his own at the music camp. And around end of September, he's been to the entrance exam for the Royal Conservatory of Brussels for piano studies. Then something didn't work in the second half of his exam. He said the voices started to. He said that much later. I didn't know. Started, what are you doing here and things like this, and you're going to fail. And finally, they covered his own music.
Okay, which is common when you're under stress. Things.
Yes, and I heard later that it's from the piano teacher. Had he presented his exam the year before, he would have passed, and he didn't this year because the competition was higher than the year before. Mm-hmm. That's what she said to us. I learned later from another professor that no, that's not the reason your son was good enough, but he hadn't played piano for 2 years. And so they didn't trust him, that he would go to the end of his studies. So they said he can come back next year, we'll see. See, this question.
So he had some pressure which kind of then impacted on his recovery. Yeah.
Yes. So for us, it was good. He wanted to do some studies, and we were prepared to help him. And so it said, what else to do? He got interested in sound engineering. You see this big console, we have plenty of buttons in studios, and he was really interested by that. And there was an open door day, and we've been there, and so he was so interested, he got registered, and he started to study there. And I was looking for psychological support. I said, well, we're going to miss something at some moment. From what I had learned, so we need, like, it's one of the principles of open dialogue. And just us, so that's not enough. He has no network in Brussels. He goes to study. He has to take the train in the morning and come back in the evening from home. We don't have a room for him next door to the institute as yet. All came so fast. And a month later, I had tried with the local resources we have for, what do you say in English? Geestelijk zorg is the mental care, mental care. These people were not trained in open dialogue. And at some moment, my son felt distressed with the voices, with some visual hallucination. He went to this mental care office, and the lady in charge there got scared. She took him in a taxi and went straight to a psychiatric department of a general hospital.
Oh, gosh.
There he was.
Yeah.
So drugged again. So
right.
Started.
Oh, gosh.
We were informed this time, and so I immediately informed the psychiatrist, hey, you have to apply open dialogue. So I showed she had never heard about that.
Right.
So I make sure I was sitting next to her, and each time I was then taking her mouse, putting that in the favorites. So she cannot say that. She cannot say that she doesn't have the information. She was vexed, or a bit surprised that I was with her dad to do that. She was the psychiatrist, psychiatrist. I think they know everything better than you.
Not all of them. Not all of them. Let's not.
My son had 20 different, and the 20 were the same.
Yeah, I know. It's when you've been through it.
There are a few good ones, but I haven't met one in Belgium. And I heard there could be one or two, but I don't know where. So, certainly not in the university hospital where he was. And so the procedure there is the second episode, they call that, of psychosis. They call that second episode of psychiatric drug poisoning. They're not happy when I say that, and the psychiatrist.
No, I'm just wondering, Luc, what your son's interpretation of this is. Does he relate to the spiritual kind of elements of, you mentioned the shaman what a shaman sees in a mental hospital article, which is amazing. Does he?
he has an interest, but you know, the discussion about all this from parents to children doesn't work really
Yeah.
well.
So is he not that open?
Talk to us about that.
Okay.
And I know he's busy on the internet looking for plenty of things. He's looking for diet and ingredients from shamans and so on. So he has an interest, but I cannot discuss with him because the discussion doesn't flow.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
It's really the barrier from from kid to parents.
That's why the open dialogue space is so important, isn't it? Because you can't do it. You as much as you know, you can't do it for your own family. I know that. The reason I asked was because I know he was at the Crazy Wise conference with you.
Yes.
So I'm just kind of wondering if he's as open to that interpretation. Which presumably
it's the first conference where he came with me because he was interested. Although I always have to go without him, except the very first one, Open Dialogue workshop in Hamelina after a visit of Antonio.
So you've not had the opportunity of having any open dialogue sessions at all.
Let me go.
Sorry. Yeah.
So he was back in the psychiatry, so the University Hospital Flemish speaking of Brussels. Then the second episode you spend 3 weeks instead of 6 for the first episode, and then you go to follow the health insurance procedures. You go to a psychiatric center or ward that is separated from general hospital. You know, this the only psychiatry has separated hospitals for the disciplines. So they're missing the multidisciplinary and the contact with others.
So
this kind of inbreeding diseases. So he picked then the psychiatric ward of the University of Leuven in Kortenberg. When we arrived for his registration, there was a psychiatrist, and he didn't want us, his mother and me, in the beginning of the meeting, so we joined half an hour later. And of course, I immediately talked about open dialogue. And she said, "Oh yes, I know about open dialogue." Say, that's the first time in psychiatrist. I said, these drugs are not necessary. I said, in 2 weeks' time, there will be no more drugs.
Gosh.
Said, hey, that's what she said.
Wow.
Not what she did.
Okay.
So, and she had shaken hands with Jaco Sekula, but it doesn't mean she accepted what Jaco was saying. The acceptance is something different. Huh? So and I got frustrated. I was going to fetch my son for dinner in the evening, bringing him back and things like this. And after 2 months, I got so frustrated that I said to this, to the nurse, to the sociologist, to the psychologist, the psychiatrist was not there. I was really furious. I said, "Do you know open dialogue? You pretend you have the DVD and you don't find it, and we know 2 months later. And do you know how long does it last? It's 4 to 5 days." I said, "Maximum psychiatric drugs, not 2 months." And the entire section where my son was, the patients got afraid. They went to their rooms. And the personnel, the psychologists, they went back to their offices. They said they were so afraid of me. And, then I had a phone call from the psychiatrist, the head of the section, and she said, "Come to my office to discuss about all that, and we'll see." And so it was. I had that meeting 31st December, so it's 1:30 in the afternoon. I stayed 1.5 hours, just her and me in her office. She knows everything about the literature, open dialogue, the work of Wundering, the work of Tim Harrow. She knows everything. Right. It applies nothing.
Yeah, I think...
And I understood, that's very important here. I understood that she knows about all that, but it can sabotage that better and keep the way they're doing.
Yeah, you know, it's
It's really
so
disgusting.
difficult. I can so relate to your anger, Luke,
Mm.
because I've been in similar situations myself where I've just feel so frustrated. But also having done the open dialogue training with some doctors and clinicians, it's also, you know, it's so difficult because I can see the frustration for them as well, because, you know, we're talking about policies having to change because they've got so much pressure and they're under so much kind of fear of not being responsible anymore for people, that it stops them doing what they want to do as humans. So we're talking about the need to be a change at a political level, you know, a
This,
policy
this,
level.
this how it started in Tonio.
Yeah,
The political level said we can't afford the bill anymore.
yeah, yeah.
And here we paid bills for my son via the insurance, 10,000 euros per month. Just to be there, they have some kind of therapies, ergo therapies, music therapy, and it's always one-on-one basis. There's almost nothing activity in groups. There's sometimes work, but they're so drugged that they can't work. So you see all these things, they can't socialize because they're too drugged.
Yeah.
So the healing cannot happen in this environment.
You know, I think what we're both talking about and what we both want is to see this new paradigm evolving and becoming so strong that the old way collapses, because I think that's the only way, isn't it? It's like this collapse of the old is the only way that the new can kind of come in and take over.
That's what's his name again? Buckminster Fuller, Richard Buckminster Fuller said, if you want to do something, don't fight the existing reality. In this case, the existing psychiatry. Better you build a new model that will make the existing model obsolete.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, Socrates said something like that as well, I think.
That's what happened in Tonio, finally. They built the open dialogue model, and there's no more money going to the old model in Western Lapland.
Yeah, which is when a crisis can become a breakthrough, because it's like the chaos before everything changes.
Not only the service quality is much higher, but it's also 15 to 20 times cheaper.
Yeah.
They go 3 times a week in the family at the beginning for 1.5 hours. So they don't have all the cost for a full day, full week, the person staying in the hospital, and they don't plenty of cares that doesn't need.
Yeah. So it's beneficial in every respect, isn't it?
And it's not just early intervention, it's early intervention with open dialogue.
Yeah.
What they talk, early intervention, we keep the people at home and so on, but then the parents, what they do, one of them has to stop working, and there is no open dialogue, so there is no healing possible. So the early intervention schemes so far have been a failure.
So is there any introduction of open dialogue happening in Belgium at the moment?
Jaco Sekula was here for 3 days in April.
Okay. To do training?
The first day, it was private. He was at that university psychiatric center where was my son. So he had the cream of the psychiatrists of Belgium. He had all the resistance to the change. I haven't heard anything from that day.
Right.
Then the second day, there was a congress at Bernum with 240 participants, and I was there. And I even offered to make sure that to develop awareness, there is a non-profit organization by sufferers of psychosis called Eulenspiegel, the owl in English. And I had organized, obtained with the organizers that 10 places would be for members of that organization. Otherwise, the people who need it were not aware at all.
Yeah.
And so I think 9 came. There was another one who was registered before. And so awareness, when I first talked about psychosis recovery to that organization with 500 members, they were totally destabilized. Because they were convinced that disabled and drugged for life.
Mm. Mm.
They raise questions. Some of them, they start to get an interest, to get information, and so on. So that was the second day. And the third day, then it was a workshop with 30 people of the local psych ward who got that interest with psychology, psychiatry. And apparently they would be busy developing a program, getting the budget right and things like this. I don't know much more.
Okay, that sounds really promising.
I heard that the organizers of the Congress are involved and they do something, but they don't communicate what they do.
Right. So what your work, Luc, is mostly your own research and going and speaking at conferences about that?
Well, I've done that once. So our family doctors encouraged me to write a paper, a review, so that the medical doctors and family doctors can be informed that it exists, that there is better than psychiatry. And
so that's your focus right now?
Yes. No, as I don't work in an academic environment, I don't get paid for that. It's fairly slow.
Yeah.
I still need to pay my bills end of the day.
Yes,
I've been to this conference. I found out about there was a plan for history of mental health conference. And I sent an abstract. I said, that could be an idea for testing my ideas, my thoughts, my development. Mm-hmm. It was organized by the British Psychological Society, the UK Critical Psychiatry Network.
Okay.
And one of the keynote speakers was already selected. It was Joanna Moncrief.
Oh, Joanna. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I wanted to meet her.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was an opportunity. I had tried to write to her and so on, but I can't find her email and things like this. So she's trying to be discreet. She understood she got lots of bangs from other psychiatrists. She got slowed down in the progression of her own career and so on because she dares to speak the truth. So
yes. Yeah. Anybody that dares to speak the truth is going to be.
And my abstract was accepted. And so that catalyzed me that way to do something and to start having some graphs that were hanging in my head, get them on paper and see what's right, what do I have to nuance. Especially that I couldn't have done it a year before. I was still so bitter.
Yeah.
And here I was more neutral.
Yeah.
It's
important, isn't it?
In a Rotary Club in Brussels, they invited me to present that before Leeds University so I could train and reduce some of the slides because at Leeds I had only 15 minutes. Wow. And in Brussels, 45 minutes.
Okay.
So it helped me to see what's really important in the message and what to skip.
And you've sent me a copy of that and it looks amazing. And what we did say before we started to record this interview was that when you've written your research paper, we could do another interview with you sharing that presentation and your slides, which I think would be really
slides I sent the last 3 slides were not part of the conference. I had put them there in case I had questions.
Okay. But it would be great if we could maybe do that, a second interview, a couple of months.
The most important is that map in function of time, where people are and what's the chance to go out and what's psychiatry doing to them. So it's really the disaster is psychiatry. And my conclusion of that conference was the opposite of what they say, is that for psychiatry it's a word coined in 1808. The word schizophrenia was coined in 1908. So 100 years later. And the conclusion I said, for the last 200 years of mental health history, psychiatry have tried to make us believe that it could be an alternative to the best medicine, i.e. love.
Yeah.
So put that. I'm not looking for an alternative to psychiatry. I'm using what has always been there since the ancient time.
And yeah, and you're talking about that kind of the spiritual realization that everything is
Yes.
love or fear, isn't
Yes.
it? And it's reconnecting to that love, yeah, that kind of omnipresence that we all have the opportunity to connect to. Thank you so much for sharing your personal story, Luc. Really appreciate that, and all of the work you're doing. It's your dedication is incredible.
I participate a lot to some forum and some Facebook groups. Point attention, using the information, getting questions back. That's very important for writing the paper.
Okay, so would you be happy for people to contact you if they have any questions?
Yes, sure.
Okay, so I'll include your email address on the blog link.
Yes. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us and speaking out and being part of this. And I really look forward to reading your research paper.
Last conclusion, I don't know if you noticed, we started Recovery Psychosis with that webpage of Monica Cassani. The two links on the same page.
Yeah.
And I realized that open dialogue is a rediscovery of shaman's work.
Yes. Yeah.
And they added modern statistics, which gave us scientific credibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
Psychiatry tried to be an alternative to open dialogue.
Yeah, it's so true. It's coming back to kind of ancient, our ancestral community roots, isn't it?
Yes.
So you coming from Africa is so significant, I think, as well.
These are coincidences when you put the pieces of the jigsaw together. So
yeah, incredible, amazing, and it is all coming together. It does feel like the jigsaw is finally forming. So exciting. Thank you. I shall look forward to talking to you again.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.